question was, does exposure to media violence increase an individual's likelihood of engaging in violent behaviour? Defining media as a means of mass communication such as books, newspapers, magazines, radios, television, and video games. And violence as aggressive behaviour that causes physical or emotional harm to others. I chose Bandura's transmission of aggression through imitation of aggressive models as my experimental study to research the correlation between violence seen throughout the media and an individual's likelihood of engaging in violent behaviour. Albert Bandura was born on December 4th, 1925. Bandura was born in Canada. His parents were Polish wheat farmers. Albert Bandura is best known for his role in developing the social learning theorist. Bandura is a behavioralist psychologist and believed that humans are active information processors and think about the relationship between their behaviour and its consequences. Observational learning could not occur unless cognitive processes were at work. Bandura's social learning theory states that children develop through learning from other people around them. This theory focuses on the process of both observation and imitation of role models. This is relevant to our topic question today and the association between the exposure of violence in media and aggressive behaviour shown throughout society. As our topic question is asking whether observed violence causes the likeliness for us to imitate this violence throughout society. Bandura's study aimed to demonstrate that children that were exposed to observing aggressive behaviour would be more likely to imitate this aggressive behaviour. The children in the experiment were pre-tested to determine their natural level of aggression to compare if exposure to violence caused a change in their behaviour. The children were divided into 3 groups. The first group was exposed to an aggressive model. The second group, a non-aggressive model. And thirdly, a control group. These major conditions were then subsequently split into gender groups and then subsequently split again by the gender of the model they were exposed to. The study predicted that studies exposed to aggressive models would display similar aggressive behaviour. Subsequently, those who were exposed to non-aggressive models will have a generalised inhibiting on the subject's subsequent behaviour. Gender roles were also taken into consideration throughout this experiment, with the prediction that subjects will imitate the behaviour of the same-sex model. The method of this experiment was by choosing participants of both 36 girls and 36 boys enrolled in Stanford University Nursery School. The age range was between 37 to 69 months with a mean age of 52 months. 2 adults, a male and a female, were selected as behavioural models. A female experimenter, however, conducted the study. These groups were then exposed to 3 stages of the experiment. In stage 1, the model and the children were brought to the experimental room containing toys, including a Bobo doll. In the non-aggressive condition, the model played with toys in a pleasant and calm manner. However, in the aggressive condition, the model distinctly displayed aggressive behaviour towards the Bobo doll, hitting and kicking the doll. In stage 2 of the experiment, the children were removed after 10 minutes to a separate room and subjected to mild aggression arousal by telling the children that the very best toys were for the other children. In stage 3, the children were allowed to play individually with an array of aggressive and non-aggressive toys. The child was then monitored for 20 minutes, during which time their behaviour was observed by judges through a one-way mirror. This data was recorded in 5-second intervals, individually assessed and calculated by the occurrence of their initiation of physical and verbal aggression, as long with their aggression towards inanimate objects and levels of aggression inhibition. The results were concordant with the hypothesis that children who displayed more aggressive behaviour had been exposed to the aggressive model, and correspondingly, the subjects in the non-aggressive model behaved less aggressively. The gender role theory was also suggested in this experiment, as boys' responses were recorded as being more aggressive than the girls', and greater again when the boys' model was of the same sex. However, the effect of the model's gender was also shown through the results of the girls displaying a greater physical aggression with a male model and a greater verbal aggression with a female model. However, the results of the number of times Bobo was punched was unpredicted, with gendered effects being the opposite and girls displaying this aggression most frequently. These results formed the basis of Bandura's social learning theory, that behaviour is learned through the process of observation of another person's behaviour. However, there were limitations in this experiment. The use of a Bobo doll in this study as the purpose is a limitation, as the purpose of Bobo dolls is to hit and kick them. Furthermore, the validity of greater aggression being attributed to masculine behaviour may not relate to current society, as research suggests individuals are becoming more androgynous. Also, the experiment fails to show the long-term effects of aggression and is subjective to the perception of aggression, as for what the experimental reporter made to see as aggression, the children could see as playing. Bandura's experiment shows that violence is believed to be directly correlated to exposure to violent messages conveyed by media. Bandura's experiments support this idea that exposure to aggression results in aggressive behaviour. This study was conducted in 1961. In 1963, there was a follow-up experiment which used the same methodology but showed the aggressive model via video. However, this has had a much less defined response than the initial experiment in 1961. In recent times, the link to exposure to violent media and acts of violence has become public concern and debated through media, especially in the wake of mass shootings. In just 2012, at a midnight screening of the new Batman film, The Dark Knight Rises, a sole shooter opened fire into the crowd, half an hour into the film killing 12 people and injuring 58 others. When the man was apprehended, it was reported that he had dyed his hair red and was calling himself the Joker, the main villain of the previous movie in the series. The Joker was an extremely violent character and was often depicted shooting civilians on a mass scale. Although this case of mimicking media violence is extreme, there is cause to believe that exposure to violent media in this case led to the violence. However, the message of the Batman series of the film is that good triumphs over evil. The shooter apparently interpreted this differently. Studies such as Bandura's transmission of aggression through imitation of aggressive models and Bandura's social learning theory support that exposure to media violence increases the likelihood of violent behaviour. However, there is not a cause and effect relationship between the two variables. Therefore, just because an individual is exposed to media violence does not mean that they will become violent. It is also important to remember that violence in media is just one of the many sources of exposure to violence we may receive, and thus, although we may be able to determine a correlation between exposure to violence in media and violent behaviour, we cannot determine causation. Thank you.